Otep, and welcome back, brothers and sisters, to African Metaphysical Center for Spiritual Healing, Body, Mind, and Spirit Development. I'm your host, Daryl Greer, metaphysical practitioner, Reiki master, and Qigong instructor. Today is a special lesson for me. It's called Lesson in Church History and the Fathers of the Church. And this is to my family and friends. The lesson I'm about to share with you today changed my life forever. Some of you know that I attended college to become a theologian, but some of you don't know why I left the school. Because a lot of my family and friends refuse to learn church history, I have decided to interrupt my other lessons to bring it to you. I hope you will research what I'm about to share with you, but I know some of you won't. If I can reach a few, then I have done what I was called to do. This is what I learned in college. Now, I will start with the council meeting of the church regarding the Nicene Creed in 325 AD and what it was about. I will then discuss the Council of Trent and what it was about between 1545 and 1563. I will discuss two of the main church fathers of that time, Martin Luther and William Tyndale, and what happened to them. All of this information I'm about to disclose to you can be researched, so please do. And after this lesson regarding Christianity, I am finished discussing it. There are others who has let religion go to raise their level of consciousness for what's to come later. In 325 AD, an important council meeting known as the First Council of Nicaea took place. This council was convened by Emperor Constantine I and brought together Christian bishops from various regions to address theological issues and establish a unified Christian doctrine. One of the key topics discussed was the nature of Jesus Christ and his relationship to God the Father. So here is where they decided who they would say he was and teach it to the people. Excuse me. The council resulted in the formulation of the Nicene Creed, which clarified the Christian beliefs in the Holy Trinity and affirmed Jesus as both fully divine and fully human. Here is where they said what he would be. The council also dealt with other matters such as calculation of Easter. Here is where you get your Easter from, and the condemnation of the teachings of Arius, a priest who belief were deemed heretical. Now, here is where Arius disagreed with them, basically saying, we can't teach this. And later they called him a heretic for it and tried to kill him, but he fled back to Africa. Research for yourself. Overall, the First Council of Nicaea played a significant role in shaping early Christian theology and establishing a foundation for the future development of the faith. The Council of Trent, which took place between 1545 and 1563, was a significant event in the history of the Catholic Church. Several important topics were discussed and addressed during this council meeting. One of the main objectives of the Council of Trent was to address the Protestant Reformation and reaffirm Catholics' teachings. The council discussed issues such as the authority of the Pope, the interpretation of scriptures, and here is where they solidified the interpretations of the scriptures you now have, and the role of good works in salvation, It emphasized the importance of tradition alongside scriptures as sources of religious authority. The council also addressed the issues of indulgences, which were a focal point of Martin Luther's criticism. Here is where Martin Luther disagreed with the church regarding indulgences. We will get to that later. The Council of Trent clarified the church's stance on indulgences and established stricter regulations to prevent their abuse. Other topics discussed include the sacraments, the priesthood, and the liturgy, means how they shall worship, the drinking of the blood, things like that. They put that together. The council reaffirmed the belief in the 7 sacraments and emphasized their significance. It also addressed the need for better education and training of priests and made efforts to improve the quality of religious instructions. Overall, the Council of Trent aimed to address the challenges posed by the Protestant Reformation and to strengthen and reaffirm Catholic teachings and practices. Its decision had a major impact on shaping the Catholic Church doctrine and practices for centuries to come. So far, I ask you, do you see God's work here, or is it man? Now let me talk about Martin Luther. Martin Luther, a German monk and theologian, became one of the key figures of the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. He was initially a devoted Catholic, but his outrage with the church stemmed from several reasons. One of the main issues that angered Martin Luther was the sale of indulgence. Indulgence were certificates issued by the church that supposedly granted forgiveness of sins, both for the living and the deceased. This is where you get the term hell from, and it was introduced. They were telling the people that they could get their beloved deceased or themselves out of purgatory or hell if they paid a fee to the church. Luther believed that the sale of indulgence was a corrupt practice that misled people and exploited their faith for financial gain. Luther also criticized the church's teachings on salvation. He believed that salvation should be achieved through faith in God's grace rather than through church's system of good works and sacraments. Luther argued that individuals could have a direct relationship with God without the need for intermediaries such as priests or popes. Here, Martin Luther was trying to convince the church to teach the people that God was within and not in the church or a priest's hands. Additionally, Luther was criticized of the corruption and wealth within the church. He denounced the luxurious lifestyles of some clergy members and the misuse of church funds. Luther believed that the church should refocus on its spiritual mission and return to the teachings of the Bible. Luther's grievances were initially expressed through his 95-page thesis, a list of propositions that he posted on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg. These theses criticized the church's practice and sparked a wider debate about necessary reforms. Luther's opposition to the church's teachings and practices ultimately led to his excommunication by the Catholic Church. His actions and writings played a significant role in the break from Catholicism and the establishment of Protestantism as a separate branch of Christianity. As a result of his actions and refusal to recant his criticism of the Catholic Church, Martin Luther was excommunicated by the Pope Leo X in 1512. 21. Excommunication meant that Luther was officially expelled from the Catholic Church and considered an outcast in the eyes of the church. However, despite the severity of this punishment, it did not deter Luther from continuing his effort to reform the church. In fact, his excommunication only fueled his determination and solidified his position as a leader of the Protestant Reformation. It is worth noting that while Luther faced significant opposition and backlash from the church, he also found support among many individuals who shared his concern about the church's practices and teachings. His ideas gained popularity and led the establishment of the Protestant denomination throughout Europe. The church wanted to unalive him, but because the people was loving him so much, they allowed him to leave the church. Unfortunately, that wouldn't happen to my next character. How you got the Bible you are reading today and the English language was due to this man, William Tyndale. William Tyndale was an English scholar and theologian. He played a significant role in the Protestant Reformation. He is best known for his translation of the Greek Septuagint Bible into English, which made the scriptures accessible to common people. You see, in that period of time, 96% of the people were laymen and were illiterate, and only the noblemen and priests were able to read these texts. In the early 16th century, the Roman Catholic Church opposed the translation of the Bible into vernacular languages, believing that it should only be available in Latin. Tyndale, however, strongly believed that the Bible should be accessible, hell, he wrote it, to all individuals in their own language. As a result of his translation work and his criticism of the church's practice, Tyndale faced opposition from the church authority. And in 1536, he was arrested and charged with heresy. After being held in prison for over a year, he was ultimately condemned and executed by strangulation and then burned at the stake. Go read about this. The church hated him so much, they dug him up and had his bones scattered throughout the land. Despite his tragic fate, Tyndale's translated work had a lasting impact. His English translation of the Bible laid the foundation for subsequent translations and greatly influenced the development of the English language itself. His efforts to make the Bible accessible to the masses played a pivotal role in the spread of Protestantism, and the Reformation movement. So, as you see, man played a big role in what you believe in today so deeply, not God. If they could do something like this to those that help implement the Bible, what would they do to you? 400 plus years of slavery. I'm finished. I have given you a history lesson I learned in college on the church fathers when I did my thesis. It is up to you now to dig deeper or not. My last message. If I'm going to put my entire beingness on the line for all eternity for what I believe in, you better believe I want to know everything about this belief. Where it came from. How did it start? How did we get it? What was my ancestors practicing before colonization introduced this to us? Until next time, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.